So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was a legend of Night City immune to cyberpsychosis. Naruto x Lucy, Cyberpunk, Edgerunners. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Chapter 1. The Echoes of a Distant Past. The city hummed, a colossal beast of chrome and neon, endlessly devouring and regurgitating the lives within its guts. Night City. For Naruto Uzumaki, it was a symphony of chaos, a cacophony of ambition and despair far grander than any ninja village. Yet oddly familiar in its raw, unfiltered struggle for survival. He moved through it like a ghost, a whisper in the roaring static, the ghostrunner, as the whispers called him, though few knew the whispers were true. Naruto didn't rely on Karoshi optics or subdermal wiring to perceive the city. His senses, honed by a lifetime of chakra mastery, stretched beyond the visible spectrum. He felt the tremor of a distant gang shootout vibrate through the synth-steel sidewalks, tasted the metallic tang of recycled air spiced with ozone and exhaust fumes, heard the discordant symphony of countless data streams interwoven with the desperate pleas of the forgotten. His whisker marks, subtly faded with age but still present, twitched with every shift in the city's chaotic energy. He wore a simple, dark jacket, durable and unassuming, overclothes that blended into the utilitarian fashion of the plebs, concealing the raw power thrumming beneath his skin. No flashy chrome for him. His enhancements were organic, ancient, and utterly bewildering to a world obsessed with augmentation. It had been decades since he'd arrived, a journey across realities he barely remembered, a of collapsing dimensions and a jarring, violent entry into this new, technologically advanced yet spiritually starved world. He'd learned the language, the customs, the brutal rules of engagement. He'd seen the horrific progression of cyberpsychosis, the tragic unraveling of minds overloaded by chrome, and instinctively understood why he was immune. His body, his very soul, was a tightly wound coil of vibrant chakra. A self-sustaining ecosystem that rejected invasive foreign elements. Chrome wasn't an enhancement to him. It was a foreign contaminant, like a splinter or a poison, naturally purged by his unparalleled life force. His mind, expansive and resilient from years of managing Kurama's volatile presence, simply shrugged off data spikes and invasive net attacks. Tonight, the wind carried the scent of desperation, a distinct metallic note that suggested more than just another gang war. Naruto moved silently, a shadow among shadows, across the grimy rooftops of Watson, drawn by an almost imperceptible distortion in the city's omnipresent data hum. It was a subtle shriek, a digital scream beneath the surface noise, indicating a netrunner in deep trouble. He rarely intervened directly in netrunner skirmishes. It wasn't his usual purview. But this wasn't just any digital distortion. It felt raw, vulnerable, and strangely, it resonated with a quiet melancholy he recognized. Down below, on the rain-slicked streets, a pitched battle was unfolding between a detachment of Maelstrom gonks and a handful of Arasaka security personnel. The Maelstromers, their faces a grotesque symphony of metal and leads, shrieked gutturally as their heavily modified arms ripped through the air, spitting lead. The Arasaka agents, sleek and disciplined in their black and red armor, responded with precision. Their smart weapons tracking targets with unnerving accuracy. It was a standard Night City tableau, corporate expansion clashing with gang territoriality. Usually, Naruto would simply bypass such a scene, a silent observer, but the digital shriek was intensifying, emanating from somewhere within the chaos. He dropped from the roof with the grace of a falling leaf, landing in a shadowed alleyway behind the Maelstrom lines. No one saw him. Their cybernetic eyes, designed for the visible spectrum and infrared, missed the subtle ripple of chakra-enhanced motion. He wasn't invisible, just out of sync. A silent blur. The Maelstromers were brutal, but predictable. Naruto weaved through them, a ghost in their peripheral vision. One bulky Maelstromer, his arm a gleaming mantis blade, spun, sensing a disturbance. But Naruto was already past him. He touched another's arm, a quick, precise strike to a nerve cluster, and the man's enhanced limb spasmed, the mantis blade retracting uselessly. He didn't kill, he disabled. A touch to a neural port, a gentle burst of chakra, and another Maelstromer's cyber optics went dark, leaving him flailing blindly, screaming about a sudden system crash. The Arasaka agents, momentarily confused by the Maelstromers' sudden disarray, pressed their advantage. Naruto wasn't there to help Arasaka, though. His focus was on the digital distress. He traced the energy signature, feeling it emanate from a derelict apartment building overlooking the street fight. It pulsed with a desperate energy, fading then flaring, like a dying star fighting for life. Inside the crumbling building, amidst the grime and flickering emergency lights, Lucy Kushinada was fighting for her life, though her battlefield was entirely digital. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her fingers flying across her cyberdeck, the neural interface cable a white umbilical cord connecting her to the net. Sweat slicked her pale skin, and her short, white hair clung to her forehead. Her face, usually a mask of cool detachment, was contorted in a grimace of pure concentration. Lucy was a legend in her own right, a ghost of the net, feared and respected in equal measure. But even legends had their limits. She had ventured too deep, seeking a specific piece of data, a fragment of her own forgotten past, a whisper of Arasaka's cruel experiments, and now she was trapped. Arasaka's Blackwall defenses were like nothing she'd ever encountered, sentient algorithms designed to tear intruders apart on a molecular level. And worse, a relentless Arasaka Netrunner, a Wraith, by their internal designation, was actively hunting her, trying to force a Blackwall breach, to flatline her brain. "Get out, Lucy, it's not worth it." Falco's voice crackled through her comms, distorted by interference. "You're pushing too deep." "I'm almost there," she hissed back, her eyes wide, staring at the swirling, hostile landscape of the net. Data streams solidified into razor-sharp shards, threatening to sever her connection. Just a little more. Suddenly, the digital landscape around her shifted. A subtle, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the hostile data, a momentar. Why flicker in the overwhelming aggression of the Blackwall? It was as if a powerful, alien pulse had briefly disrupted the network, a wave of pure, untraceable energy. For a split second, the Wraith's relentless assault faltered. The razor-sharp data shards wavered, giving Lucy just enough precious milliseconds to sever her connection, snatching the fragmented data and pulling back from the brink. She ripped the neural cable from her head, gasping, her body convulsing from the neurological backlash. Her vision swam, the room tilting violently. She tasted bile, but she was alive, and she had the data, fragmented as it was. "Lucy, you all right? What the hell was that?" Falco demanded, his voice laced with concern. I don't know," Lucy whispered, staring blankly at the dark screen of her cyberdeck. Something interfered. Something powerful, not Chrome, not a Netrunner. It was a blank spot. A void in the data. And then, a pulse. She shivered, despite the sweat chilling her skin. This wasn't just a close call. It was an anomaly she couldn't explain. The Arasaka Wraith hadn't just paused, it had been disrupted. Almost repelled. Outside, Naruto stood on the rooftop of the derelict apartment building. His eyes closed. He'd focused a precise, minute burst of chakra, pushing it into the city's vast, invisible network, targeting the source of the digital shriek. He hadn't known what he was doing, not precisely. But he'd sensed a desperate struggle against something cold, something artificial. He'd merely overloaded the system, created a momentary surge of pure, raw RGY that disrupted the delicate balance of the net around the individual. It was a crude, instinctual defense, a shield against digital aggression. He hadn't seen the net, not like a Netrunner, but he'd felt its oppressive weight, its invasive tendrils, and had instinctively pushed back. He opened his eyes. The digital shriek was gone, replaced by a faint, resonant hum. A melancholic hum, but no longer desperate. He could sense the distant, lingering presence of the Netrunner, pulling away, alive. He felt a quiet satisfaction. He preferred not to be seen, not to be known. Anonymity was his greatest asset in this city. A shield against the relentless curiosity of core like Arasaka. He melted back into the shadows, leaving the street fight to continue its brutal, meaningless ballet. The Maelstromers were still confused by their strange malfunctions, and the Arasaka agents, unaware of the unseen hand that had aided them, were regaining control. Night City would simply record it as another skirmish, with some unexplained equipment failures on the gang's side. Days later, Lucy, recovering in her sparsely furnished apartment, hunched over her cyberdeck, a cup of lukewarm synth coffee beside her. The fragmented data she'd retrieved was a puzzle, a series of encrypted logs from an old Arasaka black site. But something else preoccupied her. The pulse. The void in the net. It wasn't an EMP. She would have felt the physical backlash. It was something organic, unreadable. She pulled up the security feeds from the district where the incident occurred, scrubbing through them with meticulous care. Standard low-res night city surveillance. Grainy, often obscured. She watched the street fight, the chaotic ballet of violence. Then she saw it, or rather, she didn't see it. A flicker, a disturbance in the background noise of the feeds. A maelstrommer, mid-swing with a mantis blade, suddenly spasmed, his arm useless. Another, his cyber optics blinking erratically. In the periphery of the frame, a blur. Something too fast, too fluid, too unnatural to be human, even augmented. It was gone before the cameras could properly register it. No heat signature, no cybernetic profile. It moved like air. Lucy rewound the footage, frame by agonizing frame. She processed it through multiple filters, trying to enhance the image, to find a digital footprint. Nothing. It was a blank, a ghost. Her mind, usually a fortress of logic and data, reeled. Her experience in the net, the sheer, raw power of the unquantifiable pulse, and now this. An entity that moved unseen, untouched by the city's omnipresent surveillance. Capable of disrupting advanced cybernetics with a mere touch. And it had intervened precisely at the moment her life hung by a thread. "What are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet apartment. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, a strange blend of dread and exhilaration surging through her. Every instinct screamed danger, but another, deeper part of her, the part that yearned for freedom from Arasaka's grasp, sensed an unprecedented opportunity. If something could defy Night City's rule so utterly, perhaps it could defy Arasaka too. She spent the next few days in a digital fever, obsessed. She set up a network of low-level sensors, discreetly deployed throughout the districts where the ghost had been rumored to appear. She wasn't looking for a visual. She was looking for that signature. That anomaly. The void. Naruto, meanwhile, had returned to his self-imposed routine. Days spent helping the downtrodden in the lower levels of Haywood. Mending broken pipes with earth release, providing food for starving children by discreetly liberating supplies from overly wealthy corpo warehouses, or simply listening to the woes of the disenfranchised. Nights were for meditation, for maintaining the delicate balance of chakra within him, a balance that kept the urban blight of cyberpsychosis at bay. He felt the subtle probing, the delicate tendrils of a netrunner's inquiry. It was Lucy. He knew it. Her presence in the net was unique. Not aggressive, not exploitative, but intensely analytical, tinged with that familiar melancholic hum. She was looking for him. The thought brought a rare, small smile to his lips. He'd lived a life of constant battle and immense responsibility. Here, in this strange new world, he'd found a quiet purpose. A way to help without attracting the overwhelming attention of powerful, dangerous entities. But a part of him, the part that yearned for connection, for someone who could truly see him, found her persistent. Almost scientific curiosity, endearing. He decided to give her a small push. Lucy was deep in the net, trying to trace a convoluted path of data that might lead her to the ghostrunner. She was frustrated, hitting dead ends, her algorithms failing to find any conventional pattern. She let out a sigh, leaning back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Suddenly, her comms chirped. An untraceable, encrypted message. Standard text. Look beyond the chrome. Lucy froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The message was succinct, cryptic, and utterly impossible to have been sent by anyone else. It was directly related to her current obsession. This wasn't a warning. It was a clue. It was a challenge. And it was proof. The ghost runner knew she was looking. And he was communicating. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over her. Terror, for the sheer power of this unknown entity. Elation, at the possibility of such a unique ally. And a profound sense of awe at the sheer mystery he represented. He was everything Night City wasn't. Natural, untraceable, unquantifiable. She stared at the message, then at her screen, the countless lines of code suddenly seeming inadequate. Beyond the chrome, she repeated, her voice a fragile whisper. It meant he wasn't cybernetic. It meant he was something else entirely. Something fundamentally different. Naruto, miles away, felt a subtle shift in the city's hum. The melancholic note from Lucis' presence had been replaced by one of intense, focused curiosity. He felt a quiet satisfaction. He had dropped the first pebble into the pond. Now, he would wait for the ripples. He knew, with an instinct refined by decades of survival, that this fragile, nascent connection with Lucy Kushinaga was the beginning of something significant. Night City, for all its chrome and chaos, was about to meet a legend it couldn't quantify, a force it couldn't control, and a heart it might, against all odds, find itself drawn to. The lonely vigil was ending. The game was truly on. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Nomad's Road and the Unseen Alley. The Badlands were a vast, desolate canvas of dust and rust, stretching endlessly under KY that perpetually threatened to crackle with an unseen fury. To most city dwellers, it was a dangerous, uninviting wasteland, a place where metal scavengers and nomad clans eked out a precarious existence. But to Naruto, it held a strange, desolate beauty, a stark contrast to the suffocating chrome and neon of Night City. He'd been tracking a peculiar energy signature for 2 days, a faint resonance that wasn't chakra, but something akin to a primal, untamed force, the spirit of rebellion that defined the nomads. He navigated the sun-baked ridges and canyons on foot, a blur of motion against the parched earth. His internal compass unerring, his chakra senses, spread wide, picked up the subtle vibrations of heavy vehicles, the distant scent of diesel and sweat, and the underlying hum of an impending confrontation. This wasn't his fight, not yet. But the digital static from Lucis' last encrypted, anonymous data burst still resonated in his mind. Militech operations increasing in Badlands. Watch the south fork of Arroyo Crossing. He hadn't sought out the information, but Lucis' increasingly frequent, untraceable intel packets were becoming an undeniable part of his life, a silent, intellectual dance between them. She was, without his asking, becoming his unseen eyes and ears in the digital world. He crested a low ridge, concealed by a cluster of skeletal, rusted-out buildings, and surveyed the scene below. A winding, narrow canyon road. On one side, heavily armored Militech vehicles, their gun turrets gleaming ominously, arrayed in a tactical ambush formation. On the other, partially concealed behind ancient, overturned buses, were the Aldecaldos. Their patched-up, jury-rigged vehicles, a motley collection of armored buses, technicals, and motorcycles, bristled with makeshift weaponry. Naruto recognized the distinctive, defiant spirit of a clan ready to fight to the last man. Among them, arguing heatedly with a grizzled older nomad, stood Panam Palmer. Her fiery red hair seemed to burn even brighter against the dusty landscape, and her movements were sharp, decisive. Naruto's enhanced hearing picked up fragments of their argument. No choice, Mitch. They've got us boxed in. The drilling rig is our only chance. Her voice was rough, edged with frustration and a fierce determination. She had the air of someone who perpetually fought uphill battles, but never, ever surrendered. Mitch Cross, his face a roadmap of scars and loyalty, tried to reason with her. Panam, they're baiting us. This rig, it's too important to lose. Exactly why we have to try. Panam snapped, her eyes narrowing as she surveyed the Militech positions. They want us to give up. Not happening. Not on my watch. Naruto understood. This wasn't just about a piece of equipment. It was about pride, about survival. About the very soul of a nomadic clan. He saw the desperation in their eyes, the grim resolve. Militech, on the other hand, was cold, calculating, and overwhelmingly equipped. This wasn't a fair fight. It was an execution. A chill wind kicked up, swirling dust devils across the canyon floor. Naruto felt the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the tightening spiral of tension. He knew, with absolute certainty, that Panam was walking into a meat grinder. His sense of justice, honed over decades of protecting the vulnerable, screamed at him. He couldn't stand by. The first shot shattered the silence. A Militech sniper round impacted the lead Aldecaldo vehicle, blowing out its tires in a shower of sparks and synthetic rubber. Chaos erupted, engines roared, weapons barked, and the canyon became a crucible of fire and lead. Panam, a blur of motion, sprinted towards her customized technical, yelling orders to her crew. Mitch, cover fire. Santiago, get the rig moving. Naruto didn't hesitate. He dropped down from his perch, not into the direct line of fire, but behind the Militech positions. He moved at speeds that were impossible for the human eye to track, a silent, golden-haired blur against the dust. He had no chrome, no implants to jam or hack. He was a force of nature. His first target was a Militech heavy machine gun nest, spitting torrents of depleted uranium rounds towards the struggling Aldecaldo convoy. Before the gunner could even register a shadow, Naruto was there. A precise, open-palmed strike to the back of the gunner's neck, a subtle burst of chakra to overload his nervous system, and the man slumped, unconscious. The heavy weapon fell silent. Another Militech soldier, turning at the sudden quiet, found himself face to face with an imp. OS Sibley blue eye before a swift kick to the knee sent him sprawling, his leg bending at an unnatural angle. No mercy for those who willingly slaughtered. He flowed through the Militech lines like water, a dance of disabling strikes. He wasn't killing them, not unless absolutely necessary, but he was rendering them utterly useless. He disarmed a soldier with a blindingly fast movement, the Militech assault rifle clattering to the ground. Another found his cyber optics suddenly dark, a precisely aimed chakra pulse overloading his visual sensors. A third, attempting to engage him with a powerful cyber arm, found his limb locked in a vice-like grip before being twisted violently, the mechanical joints groaning in protest as they locked up. From the Aldecaldo side, Panam watched in bewildered awe. The Militech assault, so overwhelming moments ago, was suddenly unraveling. Heavy weapons went silent. Soldiers dropped, not dead, but clearly incapacitated, writhing or simply lying still. It was like watching a perfectly choreographed ballet of destruction, except the dancer was invisible, untouchable. What in the hell? Mitch muttered beside her, his rifle trained on the collapsing Militech flank. Panam saw a flicker, a golden flash near a disabled Militech armored vehicle. Then another soldier went down, seemingly by himself. Her eyes narrowed. This wasn't a netrunner. This wasn't tech. This was something else. Something utterly alien. Suddenly, a Militech AV, a heavily armed aerial vehicle, swooped in, its mounted cannons swiveling towards the struggling nomad convoy. This was the final blow, designed to wipe them out. Naruto felt the raw, destructive power of the AV. It was too fast, too heavily armored for him to disable quickly. He had to draw its fire. He made himself visible, a momentary flash of vibrant orange chakra flaring around him, a challenge. The AV's targeting systems locked onto the anomalous energy signature, ignoring the nomads below. Its cannons roared, spitting a torrent of fire towards him. He moved, blindingly fast. He wasn't running from the fire, but through it, weaving between the concentrated blasts with impossible agility. Dust and debris exploded around him, but he was untouched. He created a shadow clone, sending it as a diversion, drawing more fire, while the original Naruto circled around, ascending the canyon wall in a series of chakra-infused leaps. Panam's jaw dropped. She'd seen mercs with chrome that made them fast, but this was beyond anything human. He was literally dodging cannon fire. And that duplicate, it had been real. The AV pilot, frustrated by the elusive target, brought the gunship lower, trying to gain a clear shot. That was his mistake. As it descended, Naruto launched himself from the canyon rim, a human missile. He landed on the AV's armored hull with a sickening clang, ignoring the futile attempts of the interior security systems to shock him. He slammed his fist into the gunship's heavy armor, channeling a concentrated burst of chakra. Not unlike a small Rasengan. The metal buckled, groaned, and then with a screech of tearing alloy, the AV's engine compartment was ripped open. Smoke billowed. The gunship listed, shuddering. Then spiraled out of control, crashing violently into the canyon floor, far from the Aldecaldos. Silence descended, broken only by the crackle of burning wreckage and the groans of the incapacitated Militech soldiers. The Aldecaldos, stunned, slowly lowered their weapons. They had survived. More than survived, they had witnessed something impossible. Panam, still reeling, stalked towards the wreckage. Her rifle ready, she saw Naruto standing amidst the smoke, seemingly unharmed. He glanced at her, his blue eyes calm, almost gentle. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded, her voice hoarse. A mix of awe and suspicion. "And what was that?" She gestured wildly at the smoldering AV. Naruto simply smiled, a disarming, honest grin that cut through the tension. Just someone who doesn't like bullies. He didn't elaborate, didn't boast. He just was. Panam narrowed her eyes, still assessing him. He had no chrome, no visible implants, yet he'd dismantled Militech's finest with his bare hands. Her nomad instincts screamed, outsider, danger, but her practical mind recognized, savior. He hadn't asked for payment, hadn't tried to exploit their weakness. He'd simply helped. You saved our ass, she admitted grudgingly, holstering her rifle. Militech was after our new drilling rig. Needed it to finally hit that big oil pocket near the old refinery. Naruto nodded, sensing the importance of it. Good. Everyone's safe. Mitch walked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of reverence and fear. Everyone who was supposed to be. How did you do that, Shun? Naruto just shrugged, a casual gesture that belied the monumental feat he'd just performed. Just a bit of fancy footwork. Panam snorted, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Fancy footwork. You jumped ONAV and ripped its guts out with your bare hands. What's your name? Naruto, he said simply. Naruto Uzumaki. Panam studied him. He was a mystery, an enigma, but undeniably powerful. And he had a strange, infectious sincerity about him. He didn't feel like a corpo, or a merc looking for eddies. He felt genuine. Look, Naruto Uzumaki, she said, her voice softening slightly, we don't usually take kindly to city folk. But you just pulled us out of the fire. You got a place to crash. You can stick with the Aldecaldos tonight. We're heading for the old fuel depot. Might even have some real food, not just synth paste. It was an unprecedented offer, a gesture of profound trust and gratitude from a nomad. Naruto's smile widened, radiating warmth. Sounds good, Panam. Thanks. He felt a kinship with these people. Their fierce independence, their loyalty to their own. They reminded him, in a strange way, of his own past, of the bonds forged in the fires of war and shared struggle. As the Aldecaldos began securing the canyon, gathering their wounded and their remaining vehicles, Naruto took a moment to observe. He felt the familiar, almost imperceptible digital presence of Lucy. She wasn't actively probing him, not now. But he sensed her, a phantom observer in the net, processing the data of the recent battle. He knew she'd be analyzing the anomaly of the destroyed AV, the impossible lack of a cybernetic signature from its destroyer. He could almost feel her brain whirring, trying to reconcile the impossible. Earlier, Lucy had sent him a cryptic warning. Not a direct communication, but an anonymous data packet slipped into his burner phone, untraceable. It was just a small piece of information, a snippet of an internal Militech comm that confirmed their intent to target the Aldecaldos drilling rig. It was subtle, deniable, but undeniably helpful. He knew she was watching, calculating. He knew she was intrigued. Her caution was ingrained, a survivor's instinct, but her curiosity was overriding it. Now, as he walked among the Aldecaldos, their suspicions slowly melting into grudging acceptance, he felt the subtle ebb and flow of their emotions. Panam, despite her tough exterior, was clearly relieved, almost vibrating with the lingering adrenaline. She caught his eye, a flicker of something new in her intense gaze, admiration, and perhaps, a hesitant glimmer of curiosity beyond his combat prowess. The journey to the old fuel depot was slow, the Aldecaldos careful to avoid further ambushes. Panam rode shotgun in their lead technical, occasionally glancing back at Naruto, who walked alongside their vehicles, seemingly tireless. So, you really don't have any chrome? She asked eventually, breaking the silence. Naruto shook his head. None. All natural. Panam snorted. Bullshit. Ain't no natural human can do what you did. You got some kinda black market gene therapy. Or you're some kinda relic from a forgotten corpo program. Her voice was laced with a healthy dose of suspicion, but also genuine curiosity. Something like that, Naruto replied vaguely, his smile unchanging. He knew explaining chakra was futile. They wouldn't understand. It was better to remain an enigma. You're a mystery, Naruto, she admitted. But you fight for the right reasons. That's more than I can say for most Chuns in this city. Or outside it. Her gaze held his for a moment longer than necessary. The wind, which had been biting, seemed to soften. They reached the fuel depot as dusk painted the sky in fiery oranges and purples, a mirror to Panam's hair. The Aldecaldos quickly set up camp, their familiar routines a comforting rhythm. The smell of cooking food, real, meat-based food, not synth paste, filled the air. Naruto found himself sitting by a crackling fire, sharing stories carefully edited, of course with Mitch and Panam, listening to their tales of nomad life, of freedom and struggle. Panam, leaning back against a tire, watched him, a thoughtful expression on her face. He was different, not just strong, but genuinely good. He listened. He cared. These were rare qualities in Night City. Later that night, as the twin moons cast long, eerie shadows across the Badlands, Naruto excused himself, finding a quiet spot atop a rusted fuel tank. He meditated, letting his senses expand, feeling the pulse of the earth, the distant hum of Night City. He also felt Lucy. Her digital presence was active, not near him, but tracing the Militech network, dissecting the data from the recent battle, trying to find the missing puzzle piece that was him. He sensed her frustration, her unwavering focus. He imagined her, hunched over her cyberdeck, her brow furrowed in concentration. A strange, tender feeling bloomed in his chest. She was so determined, so fiercely intelligent, yet so deeply alone, just like him, in a way. He knew she saw him as an enigma, a data point to be analyzed. But he saw her as a kindred spirit, a quiet echo of his own longing for connection. He also sensed a faint, almost imperceptible ping on his comms, a residual burst from the anonymous data packet Lucy had sent him earlier. A small, almost unnoticeable fluctuation in the signal. She wasn't trying to communicate directly, not yet. But she was subtly probing, analyzing, testing the waters. Her methods were cautious, scientific, almost academic. Yet, beneath it all, he felt a deeper, more primal curiosity emanating from her, a desire to understand the incomprehensible. He smiled into the desert night. The Aldecaldos had given him a new perspective, a sense of grounded freedom. Lucy was giving him a new challenge, a mystery to unravel, and an unexpected, digital connection. Night City was a beast, but it was also a canvas, and he was beginning to paint his own legend on its scarred surface. And he wasn't alone anymore. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The braindance echoes in Amox's heart. The neon glow of Lizzie's bar bled onto the rain-slicked street, high. NTING the asphalt in a lurid symphony of purples, blues, and reds. It was late, even for Night City, and the usual roar of traffic was muted by the steady drizzle. Naruto stood across the street, a silent observer amidst the discarded synth food containers and flickering hollow ads, his senses reaching out, probing the energy signature that emanated from within the Mox's sanctuary. It wasn't the raw, untamed power of the Badlands, nor the cold, calculated hum of corporate facilities. This was different. This was pain and defiance. He'd received another anonymous data packet from Lucy a few days prior. A series of encrypted links leading to black market braindances, not the usual thrill rides, but illicit, raw recordings. One particular BD, tagged simply, Clouds Bypass _007, had resonated with a profound sense of anguish and manipulation, drawing his attention. Lucy hadn't given him context, just the data, her usual method of presenting a puzzle for him to solve. He knew she was testing him, subtly guiding him towards the deeper currents of Night City's unseen suffering. He also knew she had been tracking the fragmented data he'd pulled from the Arasaka hack, connecting it to the whispers of Project Kitsun she'd intercepted. Her data streams were becoming more detailed, more frequent, a digital lifeline. He walked into Lizzie's, the muffled thrum of the bar washing over him. It was a stark contrast to the sterile chrome of corporate establishments or the rough and tumble of nomad camps. This was a sanctuary, a place of refuge for the city's outcasts and downtrodden, meted by the Mox's unique blend of empathy and righteous fury. The air was thick with the scent of cheap synth beer, stale cigarettes, and something vaguely metallic, the lingering tang of fresh chrome from a recently installed upgrade. Perhaps. His gaze swept the room, pausing on a figure hunched over a holodable in a secluded booth. Judy Alvarez. Her hair, a vibrant undercut of blues and purples, seemed to defy the dim lighting. Mirroring the kaleidoscope of emotions Naruto sensed within her. She was arguing, her voice low and impassioned, with a sleek, impeccably dressed corpo type, their conversation punctuated by sharp, frustrated gestures from Judy. Naruto recognized the deep empathy in her energy signature, a fierce protectiveness that drew him in. He found an empty stool at the bar, ordering a glass of water from the gruff but surprisingly kind barkeep. He listened, subtly tuning his senses to Judy's conversation. "Maiko, this is madness," Judy was saying, her voice strained. "You're turning clouds into a corpo playground. The dolls, they're being used, exploited, worse than ever." Maiko Maeda, impeccably dressed in a tailored synth silk suit, smirked, a cold, calculating expression. "Progress, Judy. Efficiency. We're simply optimizing the user experience, enhancing our profit margins. The dolls are assets. They serve a purpose." Her voice was smooth, devoid of genuine emotion. "They're people, Maiko. They have feelings, memories, even if they're suppressed," Judy retorted, slamming a fist softly on the table. "You're stripping them of their agency, forcing them into cycles of abuse. This isn't what Evelyn wanted." Maiko merely shrugged. "Evelyn is gone. The Moxes are a quaint relic, Judy. Night City moves on, and Clouds moves with it. This braindance you're so concerned about. Clouds bypass _007. It's just a rough cut. Nothing more." Her eyes, cold and dismissive, flickered towards Naruto for a brief moment, then back to Judy. Naruto's senses bristled. Maiko was lying. He felt the subtle tremor in her words, the hidden layer of deception. The BD Lucy had sent him, the one emanating such profound anguish, wasn't just a rough cut. It was a suppressed truth. And he felt Judy's despair. A heavy cloud of helplessness settling around her. He finished his water, stood, and walked casually towards their booth. Judy glanced up, her eyes, usually fiery, clouded with exhaustion. Naruto offered a small, reassuring smile. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm, cutting through Maiko's dismissive tone. "I couldn't help but overhear. You mentioned Clouds bypass _007. Maiko looked at him, her expression hardening. "This doesn't concern you, Chum. This is a private conversation." Naruto's smile remained, but his blue eyes held a steady intensity. "Perhaps not, but I have some experience with braindances. Sometimes, what's hidden beneath the surface is more important than what's shown." He looked directly at Judy. "You mentioned exploitation. Is there something I can help with?" Judy looked surprised, then wary. "Who are you?" "Naruto Uzumaki. And I don't like bullies," he said, his gaze briefly flicking to Maiko, a subtle challenge in his tone. Maiko scoffed. "Another deluded do-gooder. Lizzie's is getting soft. This is a corporate matter. Clouds is our property. The dolls are our employees." Naruto leaned against the booth's edge, his posture relaxed, yet radiating an unshakable presence. "Employees who feel pain, yes. Employees who are being forced into situations beyond their will. That doesn't sound like optimizing the user experience, Maiko. That sounds like slavery." His voice remained even, but there was an steel edge to it now. Maiko's face flushed with anger. "You watch your mouth, street trash. Do you know who I am? Someone with too much chrome and too little conscience, perhaps," Naruto mused, tilting his head slightly. "And someone who was about to make a very big mistake." He didn't threaten, didn't raise his voice. He simply stated a fact. Maiko, sensing the strange, unyielding calm in him, felt a flicker of unease. He didn't react like a typical street punk, or even a hardened merc. There was an unnerving certainty about him. She stood up, smoothing her suit. "This conversation is over. Judy, you're making a nuisance of yourself. Clouds will continue its evolution. Stay out of our way." She gave Naruto one last venomous glare before stalking out of the bar, her high heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. Judy stared at Naruto, dumbfounded. You just told Maiko Maeda she was making a mistake. Are you insane?" She let out a short, incredulous laugh, then shook her head. "She's going to send mercs after you. Probably cyberpsychos. I've faced worse," Naruto said, settling into the booth opposite her. "Tell me about this braindance. The one with the bypass. Lucy sent it to me." He paused, then added, "She's a friend. She cares about justice." Judy's eyes widened. Lucy. You know Lucy. How? She shook her head again, dismissing the question for now. Okay. Naruto. Thanks for sticking your neck out. This BD, it's a standard Clouds program, but with a hidden layer. Maiko's been pushing these new neural inhibitors, making the dolls more compliant. But some of them are fighting back, their subconscious minds screaming through the inhibitors. This BD captures that. It's a doll being forced into a loop, but her true emotions, her horror, bleed through. It's a violation, and Maiko's trying to suppress it completely. Naruto closed his eyes, concentrating. Can you play it for me? I might be able to help. My senses, they're a little different. I can feel echoes, sometimes. He was vague, but he knew his empathy, honed by years of walking in others' shoes, combined with his chakra sensing abilities, could potentially delve deeper than any standard BD equipment. He could perceive the intent, the emotional residue woven into the recording. Judy hesitated, then made a decision. There was something undeniably genuine about him. And he knew Lucy. All right, she said, her voice softer. My place. It's safer. They left Lizzie's, the rain still falling, and made their way through the narrow, twisting streets of Watson to Judy's apartment. It was small, cluttered with braindance equipment, a giant, colorful mural of Night City's skyline dominating one wall. The air hummed with the quiet energy of her specialized tech. All right, Judy said, handing him a neural interface headband. You ready for this? It's rough. Naruto nodded, placing the headband on. Judy activated the BD. The world dissolved into a cacophony of simulated sensations. He was no longer in Judy's apartment. He was in Clouds, seeing through the eyes of the doll. The sterile, unsettling beauty of the high-end pleasure palace. The forced smiles of the other dolls. The synthetic sense, the pre-programmed dialogues. But beneath it all, Naruto felt the agony. He didn't just see the loop, he felt the doll's despair. Her screams echoing in his mind, not as sound, but as pure, raw emotion. He saw the subtle manipulation, the invisible neural chains Maiko had implemented. He saw the fear, the desperation to break free. It was like reading her soul. He channeled a small amount of chakra, not to alter the BD, but to amplify his own perception, to pierce through the layers of suppression. He saw the hidden pathways in the doll's neural network, the precise points where Maiko's new inhibitors were causing the most harm, driving the doll towards despair, towards silence. Suddenly, a new image flashed, not part of the BD, but a fragmented memory. A brief, chilling glimpse of Maiko meeting with a corporate agent, discussing asset optimization and disposal of liabilities, and a subtle, almost subliminal financial transfer. It wasn't about the braindance, it was about covering up deeper, more sinister exploitation. This was the suppressed truth. Naruto gasped, pulling off the headband. He felt a profound sadness, a familiar ache for the innocent, the exploited. Judy, who had been watching his reactions, her face pale, quickly paused the BD. Naruto, what is it? What did you see? He looked at her, his eyes blazing with a quiet fury. It's worse than you thought, Judy. Maiko isn't just about optimizing. She's involved in something far more insidious. This isn't just emotional trauma. It's financial. She's selling them, or parts of them, and using this new tech to make them compliant for it. This BD, it shows the precise neurological pathways for her inhibitors. But it also contains a hidden, subliminal recording of her deal with the corpo. Judy stared, horrified. Selling parts. This is beyond even her. Oh God, Evelyn was right. We have to expose her. But how? She's too powerful. And how did you see that? It's not in the BD. Naruto explained, vaguely, his ability to sense emotional resonance and subtle digital distortions. We need to make this public. The right way. And we need proof that they can't dismiss as just a rough cut. Together, they worked through the night. Judy, leveraging her unparalleled technical skills, and Naruto, using his sensory abilities to guide her to the precise neural pathways within the BD where the subliminal memory was buried, carefully extracted and isolated the hidden recording. It was a painstaking process. A digital archaeology project. They enhanced the audio, cleaned up the visual distortions. By dawn, they had it irrefutable proof of Maiko's criminal dealings, a clear recording of he are discussing the trafficking of human organs and cybernetics from the disposed dolls, using the new inhibitors to facilitate the process. Judy was trembling, both with anger and a fierce determination. This will bring her down. And it'll open eyes, Naruto. Thank you for not looking away. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. It's what I do. And you, Judy, you're the one fighting the real battle, every day. You inspire me. His genuine compliment, delivered with such sincerity, brought a flush to her cheeks. Her usual cynicism, born from years of battling Night City's cruelty, seemed to melt under his warmth. She had been so accustomed to fighting alone, to being dismissed as a naive idealist. Naruto didn't just listen, he believed her. And he had the power to act. As the sun began to peek over the skyscrapers, casting long, orange shadows across the city, Judy found herself smiling, a genuine, hopeful smile she hadn't felt in a long time. You know, she said, her voice softer, almost shy. The Moxes are having a gathering tonight. A kind of community meeting, but also a chance to blow off steam. We could use someone like you there. Someone good. You should come. Naruto's smile was equally warm. I'd like that very much, Judy. Sounds like my kind of people. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had helped. He had made a difference. And he had found another connection. Another fragile thread in the complex tapestry of Night City. He knew, with a certainty that hummed in his very bones, that his path here was not about solitary battles, but about forging bonds. Building a new kind of family. As he walked out into the early morning light, leaving Judy to prepare the damning evidence against Maiko, he felt a subtle shift in the digital air. Lucy. She was there, watching the data traffic, seeing the surge of activity around Judy's apartment, sensing the shift in the tides of the Night City underworld. He could almost hear her quiet calculations, her analytical mind piecing together the events. He also sensed a faint, almost imperceptible probe from an Arasaka netrunner, drawn by the residual chakra signature left from his unique interaction with the braindance. It was like a faint beacon, attracting their attention. Lucy, from her hidden terminal in her secluded apartment, saw it too. The sudden spike in data traffic from Judy Alvarez's location, coupled with the subtle, anomalous energy signature she was learning to recognize as Naruto's. Then, the almost immediate, precise probe from an Arasaka netrunner. They were closing in. They were learning. A fierce, protective instinct flared within Lucy. She knew what Arasaka did to anomalies, to anything they couldn't control. She wouldn't let them touch Naruto. Not after he'd subtly saved her. Not after he'd shown such genuine empathy for Judy. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, a blur of motion. She didn't contact Naruto. Not directly. She opened a series of ghost accounts, initiated a complex, multi-layered net attack, diverting Arasaka's netrunner away from Judy's location, sending them chasing digital ghosts and dead ends. It was a risky move, exposing her own presence, however briefly. But she didn't care. She wouldn't let them corrupt this light that had entered Night City. As the Arasaka netrunner, cursing, found themselves entangled in a web of false leads and decoys, Lucy allowed herself a small, rare smile. Her heart, so long a cold, guarded fortress, felt a flicker of warmth. This strange, unquantifiable man, Naruto, was becoming a beacon in her own lonely, data-driven existence. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Legend's Gatekeeper and a New Deal. The Afterlife. For Naruto, stepping into the legendary Merc Bar was like walking into the heart of Night City's ambition. The air was a thick, heady mix of synth booze, stale smoke, and the lingering scent of ozone from countless chrome additions. The muffled thrum of conversations, the clink of glasses, the occasional raucous laugh. It was a living, breathing entity, a beast of reputation and whispered deals. He found a booth near the back, observing, letting his senses soak in the atmosphere. Every person in here carried a story, a history etched into their chrome and scars. And every story, he knew, was for sale, or for leverage. He had come for rogue amendiaires. Judy, after the success with Maiko Maeda, had given him the intel he needed. If you want anything done in this city, anything truly off the books and impossible, you go to Rogue. But don't expect a warm welcome. She's the queen of this joint. And she doesn't suffer fools. Lucy, in a series of anonymous data bursts, had confirmed Rogue's unparalleled network, providing a discrete data trail that suggested a current vulnerability Rogue might be exploiting, hinting at a way to pique her interest. She hadn't said how he should approach Rogue, just that he should. Lucy was a master of subtle nudges, trusting his instincts. Naruto wasn't one for conventional approaches. He knew reputation preceded him in Night City, the whispered tales of the ghostrunner, who moved unseen, disabling gangs and wrecking AVs without a scratch. He wanted to approach Rogue not as a supplicant, but as an equal, a force she couldn't categorize or dismiss. He watched for a while, letting his presence settle, a quiet, observant anchor in the chaotic flow. He noticed a commotion near the bar. A sleek, chrome-plated fixer named Santiago, known for his arrogance and inflated self-importance, was loudly berating Claire, the barkeep. "I'm telling you, Claire," Santiago sneered, his voice cutting through the din, amplified by subtle vocal processors. "My eddies are good. You think I don't deserve a cut for this job? My mercs put in the work." Claire, usually warm but with an undeniable edge of steel, stood her ground. "Your mercs botched the job, Santiago. And nearly got my kitchen blown up in the process. You think that's grounds for a premium cut? Get out of my face before I show you the real afterlife special." Her voice was low, dangerous. Santiago bristled. "You hear that, Chooms? The afterlife's barkeep thinks she can deny a direct order from a top-tier fixer. Maybe I should just take my business somewhere else. See how long this glorified dive lasts then." He gestured to his two heavily armed bodyguards, their chrome gleaming under the bar lights. Naruto sensed the rising tension. Santiago was trying to publicly humiliate Claire, to undermine Rogue's authority by challenging her barkeep. This was an opportunity. He rose from his booth, moving with a fluid grace that seemed to defy the crowded space. No one noticed him until he was standing calmly beside Santiago. "I believe the lady said to get out of her face," Naruto said. His voice quiet but carrying an undeniable resonance that cut through the bar's noise. Santiago, caught off guard, spun around, his cyber optics narrowing. He saw no chrome, no weapons. Just a deceptively lean figure with an intense blue gaze. "And who the hell are you, street trash? Get lost before you end up in a body bag." One of Santiago's bodyguards, a hulking solo with gleaming subdermal armor, stepped forward, his hand hovering over the pistol at his hip. "Heard the man, Choom. Beat it." Naruto merely smiled. "I heard him. He's making a lot of noise for someone about to leave empty-handed. And you." He looked at the bodyguard, his eyes subtly shifting, sensing the neural pathways connected to the man's enhanced reflexes. "You're about to have a very bad day." Before the bodyguard could react, Naruto moved. It wasn't a punch, or even a kick. It was a precise, almost imperceptible flick of his wrist, a blur of motion that barely registered. His fingers brushed, head against a specific pressure point on the bodyguard's neck, coupled with a focused burst of chakra. The hulking merc's eyes rolled back in his head, and he crumpled to the floor, unconscious before he even hit the ground. No noise, no struggle, just a sudden, inexplicable collapse. The afterlife went silent. Every eye in the bar was on Naruto. Santiago's jaw dropped, then snapped shut. His remaining bodyguard, a woman with a sleek monowire coiled in her wrist, stared in disbelief, her hand frozen midair. She'd seen what happened, but couldn't explain it. What did you do?" Santiago stammered, his bravado instantly evaporating. "Just told him to take a nap," Naruto replied casually, as if disabling a fully chromed merc with a touch was an everyday occurrence. "Now, I suggest you take your business and your napping associate somewhere else, and apologize to the barkeep." Santiago, his face pale, glared at Naruto, then at his fallen bodyguard. He knew he was outmatched by something he couldn't even comprehend. He gave a curt nod. "This isn't over, Choom," he snarled, though the threat was hollow. He hurried over to his unconscious bodyguard, dragging him out with the help of his other merc. The monowire gleaming in her hand as she gave Naruto a wide berth. Claire, behind the bar, stared at Naruto, her eyes wide with astonishment. "Naruto, what the hell was that?" He offered her a reassuring smile. "Just trying to keep the peace. You looked like you needed a hand. Then, a voice, smooth as synth silk and sharp as a surgeon's scalpel, cut through the lingering silence. Quite the show, Chum. Haven't seen a wetware collapse quite so elegantly in years. Naruto turned. Standing at the VIP entrance, leaning against the doorframe, was Rogue Amendiers. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes, cold and calculating, missed nothing. She was dressed impeccably, a figure of ageless power and authority. Her reputation hung around her like an aura. Rogue, he acknowledged, offering a slight nod. He knew she had been observing, testing him. She pushed off the doorframe, walking slowly towards him, her gaze unwavering. Every merc in the room held their breath. Naruto Uzumaki, is it? She drawled, her voice a low purr. The ghostrunner. They say you move without a trace, leave no digital footprint, and tear through chrome like it's tissue paper. Most of it, I dismissed as merc fairy tales. But what I just saw, that was no fairy tale. That was an anomaly. She stopped directly in front of him, her eyes piercing. You got no chrome. So what are you? A man who keeps his skills close. Naruto replied, meeting her gaze evenly. And who wants to talk business with the queen of the afterlife? Rogue's lips quirked into a faint, amused smile. Ballsy. I like that. Most chums come crawling, begging for a gig. You walk in, start a bar fight, and demand my attention. I don't crawl, Naruto stated simply. And I don't waste time. I need your network, Rogue. Not for eddies, but for information. Information that could shake this city. Rogue studied him, her sharp mind already whirring, trying to place him, to understand his angle. She'd sensed his power, the raw, unquantifiable energy he exuded. He was a puzzle she couldn't solve with her usual algorithms. Information, you say? About what? About an old company project. Something tied to unnatural experimentation. Something called Project Kitsun, Naruto revealed, watching her reaction carefully. He'd learned the name from Lucis' latest anonymous packet, a chilling piece of intercepted Arasaka communication. He knew it was linked to him, to his origins, and probably to Lucis' past as well. Rogue's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something ancient and dangerous igniting in their depths. Kitsun, she repeated, the name barely a whisper. Her facade of cool indifference slipped for a fraction of a second. That name, it was buried deep, a ghost from a past era, linked to Arasaka's darkest. Most experimental bioengineering, it hinted at things beyond even her vast knowledge. That's a deep cut, Chum. Very deep. What makes you think I have anything on that? You have connections everywhere, Rogue. Naruto said, his voice calm. And you've seen things. Things that don't fit the corporate narrative. My presence in this city, my abilities, they're linked to it. And I suspect it's linked to others too. Others Arasaka has wronged. He was implicitly referring to Lucy, subtly hinting at their shared history, knowing Rogue's network might have vague, unconfirmed whispers about Lucy's past. Rogue paused, her gaze flicking over him, assessing. She was a master of reading people, of sniffing out lies and ulterior motives. She found none in him. Just an unwavering sincerity, a deep-seated desire for answers, and an inexplicable, raw power that defied all logic. He was a true wild card. All right, Uzumaki, she said, a slow, cunning smile spreading across her lips. You piqued my interest. Project Kitsun, that's a legacy gig. Not something I usually touch anymore. But your little parlor trick with Santiago's merc, that was impressive. Something about you is different. So, here's the deal. I'll make some inquiries, see what kind of ghosts that name still raises. But it'll cost you, not eddies. Naruto waited, sensing the test. There's a fixer in Haywood, small-time punk named Dex. He's been trying to move into my territory, poaching my talent, making a mess. He's got an operation running, trying to steal some high-value data from a corpo apartment. He thinks he's slick. He thinks he's got it locked down. He doesn't. He's about to get himself and his crew flatlined. I want you to go in there, secure that data, and make sure Dex doesn't get his hands on it. Don't kill him. Just make sure he understands his place. And make it look like a ghost did it. No trace. No witnesses. Her eyes gleamed. A test. You succeed. You get my attention. You get what you're looking for. You fail. You're just another rumor in a city full of them. It was a classic rogue move. A high-stakes, off-the-books job designed to test his capabilities and loyalty, while simultaneously eliminating a nuisance. It was a challenge perfectly suited to him. Consider it done, Naruto said, his confidence unwavering. Where's the location? Rogue gave him the coordinates, her gaze still fixed on him. A mixture of awe and intrigue in her eyes. Don't screw this up, Uzumaki. You're either the real deal, or you're just a lucky gonk. I intend to find out which. She gave him a direct comm line. An encrypted chip that would bypass all standard Night City communication grids, a symbol of her trust and his newly acquired, if precarious, standing in her network. As Naruto left the afterlife, the hum of the bar slowly returning to its usual cacophony, he felt a subtle shift in the city's omnipresent digital hum. Lucy. She was closer, not just observing from afar, but actively monitoring the data traffic around the afterlife. He felt her touch, a brief, ethereal brush against his senses, as she verified the encryption on the comm chip Rogue had given him. She was confirming its security, and perhaps acknowledging his successful navigation of Rogue's treacherous waters. Her data presence was a complex symphony of anxiety and relief, showing her deep, if unspoken, investment in his safety and his mission. She was his unseen digital guardian, a silent partner in his growing war against Night City's shadows. Naruto's comms buzzed softly. Not Rogue, not Lucy. A short, gruff message, voice scrambled. It was Panam. Heard you're making waves, Naruto. Don't get too deep in the city's shit. You got a good heart. Don't let it get chromed over. It was a warning, a sign of her lingering concern. A confirmation that her rugged loyalty extended even to the mysterious anomaly she'd met in the Badlands. He smiled. He was gathering his team, his strange, disparate family, piece by piece. Rogue had given him a key, a path into the city's deepest secrets. He just had to prove he was worthy. And he knew exactly how. As he walked towards the bustling streets of Haywood, the neon glow reflecting off the slick pavements, he briefly glanced at the sky. Above, invisible to the naked eye, unseen satellites whirred, part of Arasaka's vast surveillance network, still searching. Still probing for the anomaly that was Naruto Uzumaki. But they were looking for Chrome, for data. They were looking for something they understood. And Naruto was something else entirely. He was a force that operated beyond their algorithms, a ghost in their machine. And now, he had the Queen of the Afterlife on his side. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. Engines, Grief, and a New Path. The afterlife, even in its quiet morning hours, held a potent, lingering hum of stories untold and debts unpaid. The air, less thick with smoke now, still carried the faint scent of synth booze and ambition. Naruto walked through it with a purpose, directed by Rogue's curt instructions. Claire Russell. She's the only one who can get a ride ready for what you're planning. He found her behind the bar, meticulously polishing glasses. Her expression veiled in a quiet melancholy that resonated with his enhanced senses. It wasn't the burning despair of Judy or the hardened cynicism of Rogue, it was a deep, persistent ache. Like a wound that never quite healed. He had just received another anonymous intel packet from Lucy. This one wasn't cryptic, it was a detailed schematic for the Corpo apartment Dex was targeting. Including an oversight in its security system, a hidden ventilation shaft, too small for a chromed merc, but perfectly traversable for someone with his unique capabilities. It was her way of silently contributing. A protective hand reaching out through the digital ether. He also knew she had subtly sent a data burst to Claire's terminal, disguised as a common system update, that would help her optimize some diagnostics on her racing vehicle. Lucy was quietly ensuring his success, her fascination with him deepening with every passing interaction. Claire Russell, Naruto asked, approaching the bar. His voice was soft, respectful, a stark contrast to the usual boisterous demands she likely fielded. Claire looked up, her blue eyes meeting his. She recognized him from the Santiago incident. A flicker of surprise and something akin to gratitude crossing her face. That's me. What can I do for you, Chum? Still sorting out fixers who need naps. She managed a small, wry smile. Naruto chuckled softly. Something like that. Rogue sent me. She said you're the best mechanic in Night City, and I need a vehicle that can outrun trouble. He kept his request vague, but his meaning was clear. He needed speed, durability, and perhaps a touch of the impossible. Claire's expression sobered. Rogue, huh, must be a big job. What kind of trouble are we talking about? She wiped down the bar, her movements efficient. Practiced. Corporate trouble, Naruto replied, his gaze unwavering. A high-stakes data retrieval. And it needs to be fast, untraceable, and subtle. Claire leaned against the bar, her gaze assessing him. Subtle, you say, from the guy who flattened a merc with a touch and ripped an AV out of the sky. You've got a reputation building, Naruto. But all right, I'm always up for a challenge. Especially when it involves putting one over on the core. What's your preference? Muscle car, hypercar, bike, something that can handle rough terrain, but still turn on a dime in the city, Naruto mused. And something that won't break down if it hits a few unexpected obstacles. He thought of his recent encounter in the Badlands, the unforgiving landscape. Claire's eyes lit up, a spark of passion igniting in their depths. You're talking about a beast then. Something with torque, handling, and a hell of a custom job. I've got just the thing. My old beast, needs a few upgrades. I call it the Javelina build. She paused, then her expression clouded slightly. It was my partner, Dean's, pride and joy. We worked on it together. The unspoken grief hung in the air, a palpable weight. Naruto sensed it immediately, the sharp pang of loss, the echo of unfulfilled dreams. He saw it in the subtle clench of her jaw, the way her eyes distant. He knew that feeling. He'd lost too many friends, too many comrades. Dean, he said, his voice gentle. He must have been something special. Claire looked surprised by his directness, by the genuine empathy in his voice. Most people in Night City just ignored or avoided grief. He was, she said, her voice soft, distant. Best damn racer and mechanic I ever knew. Died in a rigged race a couple years back. Just a punk with too much chrome and not enough skill, trying to prove something. Flatlined Dean on a curve. Never even looked back. A flicker of bitter anger, barely suppressed, crossed her face. Rigged race, Naruto repeated, his brow furrowing, his sense of justice flared. That's dishonorable. Claire snorted, a humorless sound. Honor. In Night City. That's a joke, Naruto. Only honor here is profit. Dean was too good, too pure for this city. He loved the speed, the challenge, the roar of the engine. He just wanted to win clean. She ran a hand over the polished bar, her gaze fixed on something unseen. I still race sometimes. To keep his memory alive. To try and win the impossible races he never got to finish. But it's hollow, sometimes. Naruto placed a hand gently on her arm, a gesture of quiet comfort. It doesn't have to be hollow, Claire. You're doing it for him. That's a powerful motivation. And sometimes, in a city like this, fighting for what's right, even if it's just winning a race clean, can make all the difference. He looked into her eyes, his own reflecting a deep, understanding compassion. Grief is a heavy burden. But carrying it for someone you love, it can give you strength you never knew you had. Claire looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not just a merc, but a man who understood loss, who carried his own burdens with a quiet strength. His words, simple but profound, resonated deep within her. She felt a knot in her chest loosen, a tension she hadn't realized she was holding. It wasn't a solution to her pain, but it was a shared understanding, a recognition. You really get it, don't you? She whispered. You've lost people too. Naruto nodded. More than I can count. But their memories, their dreams, they still live in me. They push me forward. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the ambient hum of the bar. Claire felt a strange sense of peace in his presence, a quiet strength that was almost contagious. All right, Naruto, she said, finally breaking the silence, her voice more resolute. The beast, she's in the garage out back. You want her ready for a high-stakes data run. She'll be ready, and if you're up for it, I might even let you take her for a spin in the Badlands. Test her limits, and yours. A challenge, but an inviting one. I'd like that, Naruto said, his smile genuine. He felt a deep connection with her. A kindred spirit in the quiet strength that often hid behind a facade of toughness. They spent the next few hours in Claire's garage, a cavernous space filled with the scent of oil, metal, and ingenuity. The beast, a heavily modified nomad technical, was a monster of a vehicle, armored, powerful, and brimming with potential. Claire, in her element, explained its intricacies. Her hands flying over the engine, her knowledge encyclopedic. Naruto listened intently, offering his own unique insights. He instinctively understood the flow of energy, the stress points, the hidden potential within the machinery, a different kind of synergy than his chakra but equally fascinating. He even subtly used his earth release to strengthen a few welds, or to reshape a particularly stubborn piece of armor plating, passing it off as superior craftsmanship. Claire, impressed, just put it down to his uncanny strength. As they worked, Naruto subtly sensed a faint, familiar digital presence. Lucy. He recognized the pattern, the precise, analytical probes. She wasn't just checking on his progress, she was subtly enhancing Claire's diagnostic tools, feeding her optimized schematics for the beast's engine. Even patching a minor, unnoticeable glitch in the vehicle's stealth systems. It was a silent, almost playful, act of support, a confirmation of her growing investment in him. He could almost feel her intellectual curiosity, her mind trying to process his natural, mechanical intuition. You know, Claire said, wiping grease from her brow, if you're going to be around the afterlife. Doing whatever it is you do, you should consider yourself family. Always a drink on the house. Always a couch if you need it. And if anyone gives you trouble in here, you just point them to me. It was a rare, deeply personal offer from Claire, a sign of genuine respect and burgeoning affection. Naruto's smile was wide, heartfelt. Thank you, Claire. That means a lot, truly. He felt a profound sense of gratitude. He was building something here, brick by brick, connection by connection. The next day, the beast was ready. A gleaming, growling monster of a technical, its custom modifications making it a formidable presence. Rogue's job was simple. Infiltrate a corpo apartment in Westbrook, steal a specific data chip from Dex's crew, and leave no trace. Naruto, driving the beast, moved through the city. He could feel the pulse of the city, sensing the faint ripples of Dex's crew as they prepared their own, inevitably botched, infiltration. He used the vehicle's custom stealth systems, further enhanced by Lucis' unseen hand, to blend into the background noise of Night City. He arrived at the Corpo building, a sleek, modern tower gleaming in the midday sun. He parked the beast a few blocks away, melting into the crowds. He'd found the ventilation shaft Lucy had highlighted. It was a tight squeeze, but for him, no obstacle. Inside, he heard Dex's crew, fumbling, tripping alarms, alerting security. Predictable. Naruto moved through the air ducts like a serpent, silent and unseen. He found the data chip easily, secured it, then moved to intervene. He didn't want bloodshed, just a clear message. He appeared behind Dex's lead merc, a brute of a man with an obvious chrome arm. A subtle touch, a burst of chakra, and the man's arm seized up, his muscles locking in spasm. He collapsed, screaming about a system malfunction. Dex, watching from his monitor, swore loudly. Naruto moved through the apartment, disarming the remaining mercs with swift, precise strikes, leaving them confused, disoriented, and cursing their faulty chrome. He didn't kill, he just made them wish they had never taken the job. He left no visible footprints, no clear signs of entry. Just a profound sense of technological failure and inexplicable bad luck. He then appeared directly behind Dex, who was frantically trying to figure out what was happening. Dex turned, his face pale, and found Naruto standing there, holding the data chip. Looking for this? Naruto asked, his voice calm. Dex stared, wide-eyed, sweat beading on his forehead. Who are you? What the hell? My tech. It's all going haywire. You're the Ghost Runner. Consider this a message from Rogue, Naruto said, his eyes unwavering. Night City has its queens. Don't trespass on their territory. And don't think you can outsmart them. Or me. He placed the data chip on the table, then, with a subtle wave of his hand, caused a ripple of static to wash over all of Dex's monitors, overloading his comms and causing a critical system crash. Naruto vanished as quickly as he appeared, leaving Dex in a state of terrified bewilderment, surrounded by his malfunctioning crew. The job was done. Clean. Unseen. He drove the beast back to the afterlife. The hum of its powerful engine a satisfying counterpoint to the rush of adrenaline. He delivered the data chip to Rogue, who simply nodded, a rare hint of approval in her eyes. Clean. Fast. No witnesses. Just like you promised. You're good, Uzumaki. Better than good. She didn't offer lavish praise. From Rogue, that was high commendation. Consider the Kitsun inquiry officially open. I'll be in touch. And by the way, she added, a faint smirk playing on her lips, Claire's given you a permanent tab. Drinks on the house. She doesn't do that for just anyone. Naruto smiled. I appreciate it. As he left the afterlife, a sense of quiet triumph swelled within him. He was proving himself in this city, on its own terms. He was building bridges, earning trust. He paused on the street. The neon glow of the city washing over him. His comms buzzed. It was an incoming encrypted message. He knew it was Lucy. He hadn't asked her for help with the Dex job, but she had provided it, silently. Efficiently. She was clearly deeply invested. The message was concise, almost devoid of emotion, yet he sensed the underlying concern. Arasaka's internal network, showing increased activity around your previous locations. They're analyzing the energy signatures. Project Kitsun is no longer just a file name. It's an active priority. Be careful, Naruto. He knew. He could feel their probing. Their relentless, scientific curiosity. They were beginning to understand that he wasn't Chrome, wasn't tech. He was something far more profound, something that defied their understanding. And that made him their ultimate prize. His unique blend of natural power was drawing them in like moths to a flame he now realized he couldn't hide forever. The game was escalating. Chapter 5 End. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.